Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments, such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org. From Boundary to Bear Lake, Fremont to Payette, Oahe to Oneida, there are interesting people, places, and histories in all of Idaho's counties. And Idaho Matters wants to share it with you with stories from all 44 counties that make up the Gem State. Email your ideas to idahomatters@boisestate.edu or use the Talk to Us feature in our app, available on Apple and Android, and tune in each weekday at noon for Idaho Matters.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Samantha Wright, filling in for Gemma Gaudette. It's Idaho Matters. Well, we've been talking about it for the last few weeks, and now the dreaded holdbacks are finally here. On Friday, Governor Brad Little announced that the Gem State has to cut its budget by 3% to deal with falling revenues. So why is this happening now, and just how will it affect Idaho? Here to guide us through the maze of holdbacks and budgets is our very own political reporter, James Dawson. Jimmy, welcome back.
Sam, good to be here.
Okay, quickly, what is a holdback? We've covered this before, but just in case people are tuning in today.
Yep. Simplest way to, define it would be when agencies are ordered to cut their budgets mid-year. And we're talking about typically to prepare for expected drops in revenue.
Right. And this is what happened on Friday. Governor Little ordered a 3% holdback. So first off, who is affected by this?
So we're talking all executive branch offices. That includes most government functions you might think of, talking about health and welfare, environmental quality, fish and game, the new public defender's office, for instance. All of them are going to have to scrounge up that 3%.
And who is not affected? Who gets to dodge the holdback?
Yes. So Governor Little specifically cut out K through 12 education. That is Idaho's largest general fund, where most of the general fund revenue goes to, 49 cents of every tax dollar. That's not really a surprise. He's typically withheld any wider budget cuts or attempts to slow budget growth from K through 12. What some people might not think about, though, are other offices headed by elected officials. So think Attorney General's office, Secretary of State. They do not have to follow the governor's directive because he doesn't have that power. And that's the same with the courts, since it's the third branch of government.
Wow. And I thought that was interesting. I read that in your story, which I'll link to at Boise State Public Radio.org. Can we talk about why this is happening now? You wrote that personal tax income dropped by 5.3% in July. And you also wrote that the corporate income dropped. And I'm sorry, I thought this was a typo at first. Corporate income tax dropped by 50% compared to what was expected?
Yeah. So this is something that, at least on the personal income tax side, and certainly a portion of corporate income tax, that we could have expected, since the legislature has, for the past several years, including this year, continued to chop the personal and corporate income tax rates. We're now at 5.3% for both. That 50% drop from corporate income tax projections, I mean, that's certainly something to watch, not necessarily the whole story. So state economists predicted about $29 million coming in for July, but got 14.5. Obviously not great, but it's also a fraction of the $5.62 billion total general fund budget. It's possible those numbers could perk up during the rest of the 11 months of the fiscal year, depending on, maybe some corporations or businesses pay on a quarterly basis, for instance, in which case we haven't even gotten to the end of quarter one for the fiscal year. So again, something to watch. Don't necessarily be super alarmed by it, but definitely keep an eye on it.
But we were short in July, right? Idaho's revenue fell quite a bit.
Yeah, $40 million. So that's a 10% dip below projections. That's largely due to what we just talked about, but you also have the miscellaneous taxes on
Mm,
specific products or industries. And again, this is kind of a, raw numbers versus percentages thing.
mm.
It's down 71% below expectations, but we're talking about, 10 or so million dollars.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, so let's get back to the actual holdbacks for a minute. Each agency gets to decide how to cut 3% of its budget. Is that right?
They do, yes. So
Oh.
in May, Lori Wolf, who's the state's budget director, told agencies to prepare for holdbacks of up to 6%, given the significant tax cuts passed this year, plus general uncertainties in the overall economy.
So, do we know what's actually going to get cut? Have we seen the holdback plans yet?
Not at this point. I asked
Oh.
the Division of Financial Management for copies of those plans. They got back to me this morning saying that they did not ask for agencies to submit those plans to them. So therefore, they didn't have the records. So I am planning on asking individual agencies, one by one, with, the dozens or so of them that exist, exactly how they're going to do it. But at this point, we don't have a great idea of what's going to happen.
Which is weird, not knowing how it's going to happen in each department. But, we do know one thing. I saw this when you came out with the actual order, Governor Little's order to cut things back. He wants to cut some jobs. Can you tell us more? Explain that to us.
He does. So we're talking vacant positions that have been open for more than 6 months. If anyone has not spent a lot of time, and I don't blame you, not looking at government budgets, essentially each department and division has a number of authorized personnel that they can hire and have on staff at any given time. And so even if, let's say, I'm not going to pick on anyone in particular, but health and welfare, right? Let's say that they have one open position over 6 months or whatever. The legislature still allocates the money for it under the assumption that they're going to hire for it. But if they don't, then, that money reverts back to the general fund. But a lot of state lawmakers, especially in the Republican Party, question if those positions are actually needed if they can't be filled within 6 months, which can be a problem, and we've seen this as a talking point for a long time in JFAC. If an agency is continually having these positions open, whether it's a difficult position to hire, think like in-demand jobs,
Mm.
nursing, tech, super specialized positions, when the state doesn't pay nearly as much as the private sector for those competitive jobs. Or if it's just, we don't know if, we want to hold back some money just in case we need to, and then ask the legislature if we can spend it elsewhere. Expect to definitely hear more on this in January.
Yeah, because we've heard that before. Some departments, have those open positions for whatever reasons that you've just described, and that could be a problem if they really still need the position, and now they're telling them they have to cut it. Mm.
Yes, but that's what lawmakers or critics would call artificial budgeting, in that it's not realistic or giving a transparent view of what's really happening.
Gotcha. We're speaking with our very own political reporter James Dawson about a 3% budget holdback that was announced Friday by Idaho Governor Brad Little. So help me out here, Jimmy, because we're still getting questions about this. As he was announcing budget cuts, Governor Little also said, quote, Idaho's economy is the strongest in the nation and we continue to move in the right direction. Does that seem contradictory?
Well, I mean, it's something that stood out to me, because on its face, you're like, oh, well, you passed this budget. We're 1 month into the fiscal year. Why do we need to cut it by 3%? What's going on here? What they would argue, and what they have argued, is that the economy in Idaho has been pretty strong over the past several years. So I wrote about this a few months ago, factoring in inflation. Idaho's overall economy, the GDP, from 2020 to 2024 increased by 20.4%. That's from the
Mm.
Federal Bureau of Economic Analysis. They are predicting, and when I say they, the state, Governor Brad Little, Division of Financial Management, is also predicting, higher wage growth and personal income to grow over the next 5 years. We'll see if that happens. They're connecting that to the tax cuts in a friendlier business environment. So even though the tax rate is lower, if you get more people in and businesses operating there, that's what they're counting on essentially. And unemployment numbers have remained pretty steady. We got a new report on Friday, 3.7%. That's up a tenth of a point from the previous month. So, that's how they're making this argument that despite these budget cuts, 1 month into the fiscal year, we're still having a strong economy and we just kind of have to weather this a little bit. And we'll get new economic projections here within the next month, too.
Gotcha. We've got about 2 minutes left. What did Democrats have to say about the holdback on Friday?
Oh, they were not happy. No, not at all. So they are calling it an irresponsible budgeting move, called it, quote, reckless. And essentially, they are calling for a special session to repeal the school choice vouchers that were passed earlier this year, where parents get a tax credit that subsidizes private school tuition. That was only $50 million of the $450 million tax cut package. So not a huge component of it, but that's what they're trying to repeal and have been for a very long time.
So what happens in January when the legislature gets to town? You've got about just over a minute. Do the budgets become permanent? Do they make that decision? Do we know?
I mean, it could become permanent. They could base that off of these holdbacks. Typically, they don't. Typically, they go with whatever was set. But they're the legislature. They can make their own rules in JFAC and generally anyway, and budget from whatever starting point they choose. I think, again, we're going to hear a lot more about these vacant positions and how those factor into the overall budgeting landscape going forward into 2026.
Wow. Jimmy, thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam.
We've been speaking with our very own politics reporter, James Dawson, about a 3% budget holdback that was announced on Friday by Idaho Governor Brad Little. We're going to put that link to Jimmy's story and our past coverage at BoiseStatePublicRadio.org.
You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudette.